What's up, guys, and welcome back to Melican Fishing. I got a great video for you guys today because we're going to talk about one of my favorite things, and that is topwater frogs. You know, if you watch my channel a lot, you probably realize I throw frogs from when the water gets up into the 50s. You're going to see me throw them all the way until the water gets way down in the low 50s and upper 40s through the fall. And the reason for that is you can catch a lot of fish on a frog, but most importantly, you can catch your biggest bass of the season, of the tournament, or of your life on these things because they present a meal for bass that they really can't resist. But I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions about these baits as well, as far as getting hook sets, getting the fish to the boat, what types of frogs to throw in what situations, where you can throw frogs. It's such a versatile bait, and you will see me in all these videos, almost every video, see me try to make a frog bite happen in the summer anytime that water is over 50 degrees. And the reason for that is it's just a great big fish catcher. So in today's video, I'm going to tell you guys what frog to throw in what situation, and then we're going to go into the modifications I like to make on all frogs out of the box. I don't think there's any frogs I throw without making some modifications that are super important to you catching more fish and getting more of those blow-ups to the boat. Let's get into it. Alright, so the main two things when it comes to what frog you're going to use is the conditions and the cover. So we're going to go through a couple different types of scenarios, and I'm going to tell you guys what type of frogs I like to throw. Obviously, my frog box is extremely disorganized right now, but that's the great thing about frogs. You can throw them all in a big heap in here. They won't get all tangled up like treble hook baits, and usually they won't get all kinked up or anything either. The legs will stay good, so that is one good thing about frogs. As you watch this video, I'm hopefully sticking some giant fish on topwater frogs, so I felt this video was only fitting because I will be at the Mississippi River, pool number 8, 9, and 10, frog fishing, summer frog fishing capital of the world, that is. So let's talk about some cover first. What cover do I like to throw frogs around? You know, there's kind of a misconception you have to be around grass to throw frogs. That's not true at all. These things work well anytime you have any type of shallow cover where a bass can come up and ambush whatever's above them. I think maybe my favorite place to throw a frog actually is when a lake or river, whatever system you're fishing, floods and the water comes up a little bit into whatever cover may be, and that is the perfect time to pull out a frog, even though there might be no grass blowing up in there. If you can find these little ditches and areas where the bass can kind of get up an undercut bank or something, that is absolutely a perfect time to throw a frog. So anytime the water comes up, it's going to send fish to the bank, and that's when I pick one of these up, and it's the first bait I'll try to get a bite on. Obviously, these things work great around grass as well. So what type of grass? Well, all different types of grass. There's really only one way to find out if they work, is to pick it up and throw it. But there's definitely some certain things I look for when it comes to fishing these in grass and different ways I approach it. So my favorite type of grass to probably throw a frog in, I would say would be duckweed. If you can find some duckweed, and especially if you find it blown up into right next to some really green grass with a hard edge, that is an absolute perfect place to throw a frog. Anytime there's 2 or 3 different types of grass mixing together, even a hard spot on the bottom, you're probably going to get bit in those areas. A lot of places in the country, you know, you have a giant expansive grass mat or something like that. So what do I do in that situation? You got to find differences, points, any type of channel that goes through there, and especially look for blowholes where a fish is already blown up on someone else's bait. That fish might be gone in their live well, but there's a good chance that if it's in really thick stuff they possibly missed it, and that's when you need to come and capitalize on that bite. So anytime there's a blowhole or something open in the grass, that's a good thing to throw at. And actually, one thing I've found is the cleaner the water is, the further out you can work from that grass line with your frog. If you have 3, 4, 5, 6 feet of visibility, you can throw that frog way out off that grass line, and oftentimes those fish will see it and they'll look right up at it and they will come up and just crush it, and that's when you're going to get some really big bites in those situations. Another misconception is that you can only throw frogs and catch fish on frogs in low light situations. Not true at all. I found the higher the light is during the day, oftentimes that'll heat up a grass mat or that'll really pull fish up underneath the tree. I've talked about this in a lot of videos, but what you're looking for in the middle of the day is a shade canopy, and especially one where bait's present. So anytime you find an overhanging tree especially an isolated one. I know there's a lot of areas where there's trees hanging over a whole mile-long stretch of bank. That can be hard to pinpoint where the bass will be, but if I'm working my way back into a creek and I see one tree in one area, I actually did the other day with Flare. We didn't have that video, but there was one big shade tree in this entire backwater area, and we had 3 blow-ups under that tree, and that was the only place we got bit in the whole area. So shade is a huge deal. The same goes with grass fishing. Grass mats are not only for punching when that sun gets super high in the sky. That's the time when the thickest stuff, if you can work a frog through there, you can really catch a giant fish. So be sure to look for the thickest shade areas, any overhanging trees that create shade whenever you get in a highlight situation. You know, as far as a shade canopy, another amazing option obviously is docks. Docks present an excellent opportunity because whenever the sun's high in the sky, obviously a dock's going to put out a lot of shade, and bass, like you know when you're flipping docks, are going to be drawn to that shade. So anytime you have a lot of bait around docks with a high sky, especially if you have cleaner water, I love to pick up a frog. I've caught some giant bass underneath docks, and that's another great thing. A lot of these frogs skip really well. You know, for low light situations, the fish really seem to be more active. They'll roam around a lot more, so you can work your bait a little bit quicker on the grass edges or more of the sparse cover, and that's when you're generally going to get more bites. So those are some of the things I look for as far as conditions go, and the different types of cover I fish and what conditions. Let's get into what frogs work best for those conditions. All right, so first thing in the morning, low light conditions, you're fishing grass. I'm picking up Mr. Basic, just a basic, big size, regular frog, not a popping frog. Picking this guy up whenever I'm fishing any type of grass in a low light condition. You can work this guy through it really well. It comes through grass better than a popping frog. And so I've found any of these types of these regular body styles of frogs just work great for me in those situations. Now, if it's a low light condition, you got a little bit of wind blowing in there, maybe it's a little bit more sparse cover in grass, that's when I pick up Mr. Poppin' Frog. Poppin' Frog is an excellent alternative whenever the wind's blowing. If there was a little bit of ripple on the water, this guy can bring them in from further away and you will get more bites in the Poppin' Frog. And while we got this guy, let's talk about the Poppin' Frog. You see me throw this a ton. I love the Poppin' Frog. The reason I love a Poppin' Frog is its versatility, and it just has a draw power, that popping noise. It's the same with a popper, like a pop-R or something like that, but this is a weedless version of that. They just flat out get bit. Whenever I'm fishing areas with no grass, when I'm fishing an undercut bank, or I'm fishing something where it's a bunch of garbage blown up into a corner, or just any type of flooded bush or anything, I'm reaching for the Poppin' Frog first because it's going to draw them out of whatever that's flooded into. You know, that's one thing when you're fishing flooded vegetation, flooded trees. Those fish have a lot more water they can be in, and they're a lot more spread out. So you need to draw them in from a little bit further away, and I feel like the Poppin' Frog is the bait to do that. All right, let's keep on moving down the way here. I have some kind of specialty frogs that I'll talk about now. I really try to keep things simple. You know, I have white frogs, I have black frogs, and I have bluegill frogs. I don't have a whole lot of other different types. I know it looks like I got a million different frogs for every different situation in my box, but really, if you look closer, everything's pretty damn simple here. So as far as colors go, I like a light color when it's a highlight situation. I like a dark color when it's a low light situation, and when the water's really clean, I really like a really natural color, or when the bite's tough, I like a natural color. So a couple specialty frogs I have, here's this one by Teckle. This is a super natural bluegill color. I'll pull this guy out whenever obviously they're feeding on bluegills real heavily, but mostly when the water is just really clean, I do a lot better with a super natural colored frog. Same goes for this guy. This is a live target bluegill. Obviously a super natural bait. I like this bait because you can hit it and it glides real wide side to side. Not a great bait for working through like really thick grass mats, but whenever you got sparse cover, this guy can be money, especially if they're feeding on bluegill or any type of little bait fish like this, even shad. And once they push them up in those areas, this can be a super, super effective bait. One more guy I really, really like to throw, that would be the King Daddy. So I don't pull this frog out a lot. It seems to kind of go through phases where I just want to throw this frog at everything, and then I'll put it down in my box for like a month and not touch it. But this bait works best, obviously, when you're going for a better quality of fish. When you're fishing around a grass mat or really any other type of grass cover, and you're getting a lot of bites from fish in that 2-pound range, and maybe you're looking for that one kicker fish, that's when I pull this out. Another thing it's great for, muddy water and thick grass mats. This thing weighs like an ounce, so it makes a huge impression in a grass mat, which is super important. You know, a lot of these frogs, like this little Spro Junior, which we'll talk about in a second. That guy's caught a couple fish. He's about destroyed. They pretty much just skid across the top of grass mats, so they barely make an impression. The fish barely even know they're there, and so if a fish doesn't know it's there, obviously it's not going to eat it. This guy will make a huge impression, and I've caught some giant bass on it just because I feel like they can see it better. And so anytime you got really muddy water and some flooded areas, or you need something that just compresses down into that mat a little bit more to draw those fish in, this guy right here, I actually get really good hookups on him too. That's a really soft frog with a nice big hook for really how big it is. So check that guy out. One more specialty frog I love to pick up when the bite is super, super tough or they're just swiping and missing at bigger frogs is this Spro Junior frog. A smaller size frog when you're fishing maybe the last day of like a 2 or 3 day tournament, when you're fishing an area where you've had 2 other boats go through in front of you but you know they're still on a frog bite. Great time to throw this bait, and it actually casts really, really well for how small it is and how I think it only weighs 3/8 of an ounce. It does really, really well for its size. Obviously, it's a smaller profile. One of these in a natural color can be really, really good for cleaner water situations, just like the Teckle bluegill frog is as well. One more thing I want to talk about before I move on to toad-style baits is the ability to get a frog into places other people can't, usually by skipping. So you can throw everything out the window I just said about sizes, colors, everything. There's times when if you can get your frog to a certain place under a laydown or way up back under a dock, that you will catch a fish no matter what your frog looks like, because those fish just have not seen that pressure. This Live Target 65 frog is the best skipping frog I have found. And so I will pull it out whenever I need to get that bait way back underneath something. That's what I'm talking about with shade patterns and docks and laydowns. Getting your bait back somewhere those fish don't usually see a frog or a topwater style bait can be the ticket to getting more bites. If you only get 1 or 2 more bites in a tournament, well, maybe that was a 5-pounder and you just got a check or won the tournament because of it. That can make a huge difference. All right, so let's talk about toad style baits. You know, toad style baits are not something I reach for that much, honestly. The reason for that is they generally don't cast very well, and when I'm fishing a frog, I really like a super slow, methodical approach. And most of these toad baits, you have to reel them or they don't stay on top. Now, here's an exciting one that just came out from Teckle, is the Sprinker frog. You know, this is a great idea. It has almost a whopper plopper style sound because this back tail spins real well. The problem with that is, though, I found if it works decent for a stop and go retrieve, and I need to experiment with it more. I've only thrown it 2 or 3 days on the water, but the problem is obviously you got a super weedless bait that's moving. In order to get that fish hooked, you're really going to have to time it up and be ready to go perfect. But that's not to say it won't catch some giant fish. All right, so I got a couple other different types of toad frogs I'd like to use. Toad frogs? Toad frogs. But like buzz frogs, this is the world famous one. This is the Zoom horny toad. So I got it, I think, in white and black, because there really isn't a whole lot of other colors you need. And so when do I reach for that? Obviously a little bit more sparse cover, because you can't really fish these things on thick grass mats unless you're just really having a lot of holes in the grass that you're going to reel it up to and then work it in between. These things work great when you just have duckweed or open water and they really want the bait moving. The fish are really active, maybe a low light condition when there's a lot of clouds, maybe some rain, some sprinkles. This guy gets the nod for me in those situations. You know, the thing that I don't like about these is they are really tough to cast. You have to really downsize. I can't throw it on my regular rig that I usually throw my frogs on. I got it downsized to like a 7-foot medium heavy. Obviously braid on everything. So that is a problem for me. It's one reason I really don't reach for these that often. But if the fish are super keyed in on really small baits, like if you got a mayfly hatch or they're really garden fry or something like that, a Zoom horny toad has been a killer for a lot of years for a lot of people. Now another toad style bait, it's really my only other one in my box that I throw right now. I did get some of those new Zoom frogs though. Check those out. Zoom toads, not horny toads, regular frog toads. They're kind of rubbery. Anyway, I'll talk more about those once I use them and get some good reviews on them. But this is the other one I like to throw. It's the Stanley Top Toad. This is a nice mix of the two styles because not only does it have those kicking feet where it makes that nice sputtering sound that draws fish in, it's got a big hollow body. So you can stop this bait and it will stay floating in place, which is really, really nice. You know, if you work a bait off a weed line, a real sparse weed line, you can stop that bait a lot of time. And if one followed it out of that grass and he's up looking at it, he's just gonna crush it. And so that's a bait I really, really like for that. The limitations of it, obviously with these toad baits, you can't walk them. Like the horny toad, you can't just leave it in place. You can't work them nice and slow and methodical with those real natural flowing legs. So there are a lot of downsides to toad baits, but for whatever reason, sometimes they really like that moving frog style bait, and that can draw a reaction strike when that slow methodical approach just won't get the job done. All right, let's talk modifications. You know, there's two main modifications you need to make that are going to help you get more of your frog bites to the boat, and that is, most importantly, opening up the hook gap. And this is really going to be a matter of what you're comfortable with based on the type of grass and cover you're fishing. If you're fishing a really thick, sloppy grass, obviously you don't want to open that hook gap up a whole bunch. But if you're working your frog in open water, I've had times in tournaments where I'm fishing flooded stuff, like flooded trees and stuff, that the fish are out off of it, that I can just open that hook gap way, way up on my frog. So really, I can't tell you exactly how much you need to open up that hook gap, but I can tell you on almost every single one, you absolutely need to. What I like to do is take a pair of pliers, and I'll open up this hook gap. Let's find one that I haven't done it on it yet. Here's one right here. So this is the Ish's Fat Frog, another good style bait when you just want that basic, normal, pretty big size frog presentation that walks really well. So this is one, it comes almost perfect, but it's a thicker bait. It's got thicker plastic than some different types. You absolutely want to open it up so you can see those hooks are kind of set right behind the back of that frog. So I'll take a pair of pliers and I'll just open it up like, man, I don't even know, 1 or 2 degrees maybe. So that little change right there can make a huge difference in how many fish you're going to get to the boat. It's ridiculous. And here's one right here. You know, this one has hooks that are completely way out off of it. But that's going to make a huge difference in how many fish you hook and get to the boat. Obviously, though, you don't want to pull it out too far away from the frog's body, or that frog's going to get less and less weedless. Another thing I like to look for and make a change to, a lot of these hooks kind of point inwards. I never want a hook to point in unless I'm fishing super, super thick stuff, but that usually still, I don't want these points. The closer those points are pointing in, the more chance it's going to be that those two are going to push in and work against each other even more. You already got to put a ton of pressure on that hook set to get it penetrating the fish's mouth, so why would you want to make it even harder on yourself? So I'll take the pliers and I'll just bend that hook out away from the body of the frog. Obviously, once again, you don't want to bend out too far, that'll catch a lot of vegetation, but that's just a huge no-no for me. Alright, so modification number 2 I make to a frog right out of the box is I will trim its legs. You know, these legs come out of the box, they're super long, they look beautiful in the water, but honestly that just gives the fish too big of a target. And a lot of times they can get back there and grab the back of your frog, pull it under, especially if they're not active, and that's going to result in a lot of swings and misses, and it's going to result in a lot of fish that you barely get hooked that maybe jump off, or once they get bogged up in that grass they're going to come off. So I can't tell you a set length on legs either, but here's what I like to do. I like to cut them. I cut them down quite a bit. So this one I think is about money. So if you can see that right there, it's taken about half of what's out of the package off of it. And God, I'd say probably 1 3/4 to 2 inches is just money. A lot of guys cut one leg down, it helps it walk better. You know, I've done that a few times, but honestly, I just like to make everything look uniform. I can walk frog just fine with the legs short. The shorter the legs are, the easier it is to walk. So shorter legs is a huge, huge deal. All right, so one more modification I will make to frogs, and it's something that I think a lot of guys think it's really tough to do and you can only use rubber, but that is adding custom tails or legs to your frog. And you can really do this with any type of silicone skirting. A lot of these frogs come with like ridiculous colors, like this one. Here's a nice natural brown color frog, but it's got stupid yellow and orange. And I know that might work in a lot of different situations. It might be your favorite frog, but to me that's a little bit flamboyant. So what I'll do is I'll just take and pull those right out of there, and then I'll take like a little clothespin or something and pull a skirt tab. You know, obviously I make my own jigs. Jig skirts are really cheap. You can go on like fishingskirts.com, go buy whatever different color. They got a million different colors. And I like on some of these natural ones like this bluegill, I like to put really natural legs in those. That's something you can do different. Another thing you can do, kind of work some Flash-A-Boo in there. So a little bit of flash added to your frog. Obviously, fish are not thinking that they're eating a frog every time they're eating a frog. Usually, they're probably thinking they're eating a bait fish. So a little bit of flash can really make your frog stand out a lot. All right, so one more modification I do really like to make to almost all my frogs too is to add a little bit of sound. And the way I like to do that is with little BBs. I take these and I will push them up. You know, a regular frog has this area right here. Right where the hook holes come out, you can take some BBs and put them in there. You don't want too many in there. Anything over like 15, they generally will start to sink a little bit, but that'll help your bait compress more down into the mat. And then when you walk it or pop it, whatever you're doing, it makes a nice little chick sound, you know. And that'll just draw fish in from further and further. So on my popping frogs where I'm already trying to draw fish in that situation, I will use some BBs. I strongly advise against using glass rattles. That's something I used to do a lot of, but what I found was they'd get balled up in the back of the frog, and so when I set the hook on a fish, they just couldn't compress far enough, and that caused a lot of lost fish and a lot of lost money as well. So I would advise against that. The good thing about BBs is when it collapses, unless you got just a ton back there, is when a fish bites down and it collapses, those BBs can spread out right away instantly. They're not stuck back there like a couple different big thick glass rattles. But that's it, guys. Those are the main modifications I make. Those are the frogs I like to use. Those are the situations I throw them in. Comment down below. Let me know if you got any questions about when I throw a frog. You know, I could have probably talked about this for about 2 hours and really gone into every different type of frog, but I don't want to bore you guys with that. But I do try to reply to every comment on my videos, or at least the large majority of them. So please let me know if you got any more questions on the frog. We can get into more equipment type stuff and mechanics in a video moving forward. But for now, I just want to show you guys my basics, what frogs I like, where, and what you need to do with those frogs out of the box to catch more and bigger fish. Anyways, got a couple videos coming up. This weekend I'm at Mississippi River, south of La Crosse, Wisconsin, and Lansing, Iowa. Me and Joe are trying to win a 2-day tournament there. Should be some awesome videos because it's going to be topwater fishing, it's going to be swim jig, pretty much power fishing, and some smallmouths mixed in. So we'll have some different stuff, and then I'm going to be traveling a lot more after that too. So I look forward to that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm out of here. Peace!